Imagine waking up one morning with a sudden, crushing realization. Everything you've been told about life is a lie. Happiness isn't the natural state. Fulfillment isn't waiting around the corner. Life isn't a problem to be solved or a journey toward meaning. Life is suffering, and it always has been. This is philosophical pessimism, most famously articulated by Arthur Schopenhauer in the 19th century. And it's more disturbing than simple depression or nihilism because it's built on careful reasoning, not just dark moods. Schopenhauer observes something most people prefer to ignore. Want is the fundamental state of being alive. You want food, so you eat. Then you want it again. You want companionship, so you seek it. Then you fear losing it. You want achievement, so you work toward it. Then you want more. This wanting, this endless, insatiable craving, is what Schopenhauer called the will. It's the blind, purposeless force that drives all existence, and it's never satisfied. Think about your own life. When was the last time you felt complete? When nothing was lacking, nothing needed fixing, nothing pulling you toward the next thing. Those moments are rare, fleeting. Most of life is spent wanting what you don't have or fearing the loss of what you do. Schopenhauer argued this isn't a bug in human psychology. It's the fundamental nature of existence itself. We suffer not because we're doing life wrong, but because suffering is what life is. He pointed to three types of suffering. First, there's the suffering of not getting what you want: poverty, rejection, failure, loss. This is obvious suffering, the kind everyone recognizes. Second, there's the suffering of getting what you want, because satisfaction is always temporary. You achieve your goal, and for a brief moment you feel fulfilled. Then the wanting starts again. The new car becomes ordinary. The promotion becomes the new baseline. The relationship that once thrilled you becomes routine. This is hedonic adaptation, and it guarantees that even success leads back to dissatisfaction. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, is the suffering of boredom. Even if you somehow satisfied all your wants, even if you had everything you needed, you'd face the crushing emptiness of having nothing to pursue. Boredom, Schopenhauer said, is proof that life without want is unlivable. So we're trapped. Want creates suffering, satisfaction is temporary, and the absence of want is unbearable. There's no winning position. But Schopenhauer went further. He argued that even moments we call happiness are really just temporary relief from suffering. You're not happy eating, you're just temporarily relieved of hunger. You're not happy being with loved ones, you're temporarily relieved of loneliness. Happiness is negative, the absence of pain, not a positive state in itself. If this sounds bleak, that's because it is. Schopenhauer concluded that the best thing would be never to have been born. Since birth is already done, the next best thing is to minimize suffering by denying the will, by wanting as little as possible. He prescribed art, philosophy, and contemplation as temporary escapes. These activities quiet the will momentarily, letting us step outside the cycle of want and suffering. But ultimately, he said, these are just pain management, not cures. Some found Schopenhauer's philosophy liberating. If life is inherently suffering, then your personal struggles aren't failures, they're the human condition. You're not doing it wrong, you're simply alive. Others found it paralyzing. If nothing leads to lasting fulfillment, why try? Why build, create, love, strive? If it all leads back to suffering, what's the point? There's something deeply disturbing about philosophical pessimism, because it can't be easily refuted. You can't prove that life isn't suffering by pointing to happy moments. Schopenhauer already accounted for those as temporary relief. You can't argue that meaning makes it worthwhile. He'd say meaning is just sophisticated want. The philosophy sits there, dark and heavy, challenging every comforting narrative we tell ourselves. It suggests that the basic project of human life, seeking happiness, building meaning, pursuing goals, is futile from the start. And yet, here's the strange thing. Understanding philosophical pessimism doesn't necessarily lead to despair. Some people find it oddly freeing. If life is suffering regardless of what you do, then you're released from the pressure to optimize, to succeed, to get it right. You can't fail at life if life itself is the problem. Tonight, as you lie here, notice the small wants still present. The want for sleep, the want for tomorrow to go well, the need for this discomfort with disturbing ideas to pass. Even now, in this moment of rest, the will continues. Subtle, quiet, but there. Schopenhauer would say this never ends. That even in death, the will continues in other forms, in other beings, in the blind drive of existence itself. But for now, let it be. Let the wanting soften. Let the suffering fade into the background. Because if life is suffering, then sleep is a temporary reprieve, a small death, a brief escape from the will. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Not happiness, not fulfillment, just relief, just rest. Schopenhauer would approve. If suffering is woven so deeply into life's fabric, what does it mean to bring someone new into the world, knowing pain will greet them from their first breath? As you let the cycle of longing and relief fade, the next idea dares to ask, is it possible that choosing non-existence is the kindest gift? Let yourself slip beyond hope and tradition, stepping into the unsettling logic of antinatalism. Antinatalism, the harm of being born. Here's a question that sounds absurd at first. Would it have been better if you were never born? Not because your life is particularly bad, not because you're depressed or suicidal. Just as a matter of pure logic, would non-existence have been preferable to existence? Most people's gut reaction is no. Life has problems, but it's better than nothing. Existence, however flawed, beats non-existence. But philosopher David Benatar argues this intuition is wrong, and his reasoning is disturbing precisely because it's so difficult to refute. This is antinatalism, the philosophical position that coming into existence is always a harm, and therefore it's morally wrong to bring new people into the world. Not wrong in some circumstances. Wrong inherently always, no matter what. Let's follow Benatar's logic carefully, because it's more subtle than it first appears. Start with a simple premise. Pain is bad, pleasure is good. Most people would agree with this. Now imagine 4 scenarios. Scenario A, a person exists and experiences pain. This is bad. Scenario B, a person exists and experiences pleasure. This is good. Scenario C, a person doesn't exist and therefore doesn't experience pain. This is good. The absence of pain is good even if there's no one to enjoy that absence. Scenario D, a person doesn't exist and therefore doesn't experience pleasure. This is not bad. The absence of pleasure is only bad if someone is being deprived of it. This asymmetry is crucial. When someone doesn't exist, the absence of suffering is good. We feel glad that no one is experiencing that pain. But the absence of pleasure isn't bad. We don't feel sad for non-existent people missing out on joy. From this, Benatar concludes, for a person who doesn't exist, things are good, no pain, and not bad, no pleasure they're missing. For a person who does exist, things are a mixture of good pleasure and bad pain. Therefore, mathematically, non-existence is always preferable. The non-existent person avoids all badness while losing nothing, since there's no one there to be deprived. Your first instinct might be to protest, but life has so much good. Love, beauty, achievement, connection. Surely these outweigh the bad. Benatar says no, because even if your life is 99% pleasure and 1% pain, you'd still be better off not existing. The non-existent version of you has 0 pain, good, and isn't deprived by missing the pleasure, not bad. The existing version of you has lots of pleasure, good, but also some pain, bad. 0 pain beats some pain, even if the some pain comes with lots of pleasure. This feels wrong, doesn't it? But try to pinpoint exactly where the logic fails. It's harder than you'd think. Maybe you'd argue, but I enjoy my life. I'm glad I exist. Ben Adder would respond, of course you're glad now. You exist and have a preference for continuing to exist. But before you existed, there was no you to be sad about missing out. Your current preference for life doesn't make being born good. It's just the inevitable result of being born. It's like saying Stockholm Syndrome patients are glad they were kidnapped because they've bonded with their captors. The preference is real, but it doesn't justify the initial harm. The more you think about it, the more disturbing antinatalism becomes. Because it's not claiming life is particularly horrible. It's claiming that even good lives, even great lives, are harms to the people living them. Ben Adder points out something we prefer not to acknowledge. Life contains unavoidable suffering. Even in the best circumstances, you'll experience physical pain, emotional distress, frustration, loss, fear, and ultimately death. These aren't bugs that better technology or social systems can fix. They're features of being alive. A non-existent person avoids all of this, and they don't pay a price because there's no one there to miss the good stuff. Now, Ben Adder's reasoning leads to a disturbing conclusion. We should stop having children. Not some children in some circumstances, all children in all circumstances. Every birth is a harm. This feels monstrously wrong to most people. We celebrate new life. We think bringing children into the world is one of the most meaningful things humans can do. The idea that it's actually immoral seems not just wrong but offensive. But Ben Adder asks, is your desire for children about them or about you? If you have a child knowing they'll inevitably suffer, and you absolutely know this, can you claim their birth is for their benefit? A person who doesn't exist doesn't need to be benefited. Only an existing person has needs. So, having a child creates a need that didn't previously exist and then attempts to fulfill it. Wouldn't it be better not to create the need in the first place? Some argue that people consent to continuing life. Most people don't choose suicide, which proves life is good. But Ben Adder says, you can't consent to being born. That's the key harm. You're brought into existence without consent, given needs you didn't ask for, and subjected to suffering you never agreed to experience. And while you can consent to continuing life once you exist, you can't easily escape it. Suicide is difficult, scary, often botched, and traumatic for others. So the fact that most people don't kill themselves doesn't prove they're glad they were born, just that leaving is hard. Now imagine you're considering having a child. You know with certainty that this child will experience pain. They'll be bullied at some point. They'll have their heart broken. They'll experience fear, loneliness, and physical pain. They'll watch people they love die. They'll eventually die themselves, possibly in fear or pain. You also know they'll experience joy, love, beauty, accomplishment. But here's the question. Do you have the right to impose the guaranteed suffering on someone who doesn't exist yet, even if you're also giving them the possibility of joy? Ben Adder would say no, because the person doesn't exist to miss out on the joy, but once they exist, they will definitely experience the suffering. There's something deeply uncomfortable about this reasoning. It suggests that procreation, something we view as natural, even sacred, is actually a profound moral wrong. That every parent, no matter how loving, has harmed their child simply by creating them. Some people try to escape this conclusion by arguing that life has a meaning or purpose that transcends pleasure and pain. But Ben Adder would ask, meaning for whom? If the person doesn't exist, they don't need meaning. You create them, impose meaning on them, and then claim it justifies the suffering you've caused. Others argue that we have a duty to continue the species. But to whom? The species doesn't exist as an entity separate from individuals, and future people who don't exist yet can't be harmed by not being brought into existence. The most disturbing aspect of antinatalism isn't just the conclusion, it's how hard it is to find the flaw in the logic. The asymmetry between pain and pleasure when it comes to non-existence seems real. The fact that you can't consent to being born seems undeniable. The guarantee of suffering in any human life seems certain. And yet, almost everyone rejects the conclusion. We feel in our bones that creating life can be good, that existence is preferable to non-existence, that being born is not a harm. But maybe that feeling is just the will, as Schopenhauer would say. Maybe it's just biology, evolution programming us to reproduce, making us incapable of seeing the truth. Maybe our resistance to antinatalism is itself evidence that Benatar is right. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider this. If Benatar is correct, then being born was the greatest harm ever done to you. Not by a villain, not by chance, but by the people who loved you most. Every moment of joy you've experienced doesn't erase that harm. It just makes the trap more comfortable. And if you've had children or plan to, you're continuing the cycle. Creating new people, imposing existence upon them, guaranteeing their suffering, and telling yourself it's an act of love. Is it? Or is it something darker? A refusal to face the truth that non-existence, for all its nothingness, might be better than this. Benatar doesn't answer that question with emotion. He just follows the logic. And the logic, cold and clear, suggests that the kindest thing we could do is let humanity end. Not through violence, not through catastrophe, just through choice. Through the recognition that creating new life is creating new suffering, and that perhaps after all these millennia of existence, it's time to stop. Rest now. Whether your existence is harm or gift, whether being born was a tragedy or a triumph, for now you're here. And sleep at least asks nothing of you. Tomorrow you'll wake and face these questions again. Or you won't. Either way, the universe continues, indifferent to whether you or anyone exists to see it. And maybe that indifference is the most disturbing thing of all. If existence itself can be called a harm, what happens to our sense of right and wrong? When the very foundation of morality trembles and pain and pleasure blur, we arrive at a disturbing crossroads. What if right and wrong are only inventions, softly agreed upon but never truly real? The next question asks, is there any truth behind our deepest values, or are we floating in a sea of shared make-believe? Moral anti-realism, nothing is actually wrong. Imagine someone tells you that murder isn't really wrong. Not wrong in the way gravity exists or water is wet. Wrong only because we say so. Because humans, somewhere along the line, agreed to call it wrong. But strip away the agreement, strip away the humans, and there's nothing in the universe that says killing is bad. This is moral anti-realism, the view that there are no objective moral truths, that right and wrong, good and evil aren't facts about reality, they're constructs, human inventions, useful maybe, deeply felt certainly, but not real in the way mountains are real or the speed of light is real. At first, this might not seem disturbing. After all, people disagree about morality all the time. Different cultures have different rules. What's forbidden in one place is celebrated in another. But moral anti-realism goes further. It says there's no fact of the matter about who's right. Think about a simple moral claim. Torturing children for fun is wrong. Most people would agree. It seems obviously, undeniably true. But moral anti-realism asks, what makes it true? Is there some property of wrongness attached to the action, the way wetness is a property of water? You might say it causes suffering. Children feel pain, and causing unnecessary pain is wrong. But the anti-realist asks, why is causing pain wrong? You might say, because pain is bad. Why is pain bad? Eventually you hit bedrock. You can't keep giving reasons. At some point you're left saying it just is. And that just is reveals something unsettling. You're not describing a fact about the universe. You're expressing a preference, a value, something that comes from you, not from the world. Some people try to ground morality in God. They say, God commands us not to torture children. That's what makes it wrong. But even this doesn't escape the problem. Is something wrong because God commands it, or does God command it because it's wrong? If the first, then morality is arbitrary. God could command torture and it would be right. If the second, then wrongness exists independently of God, and we're back where we started. Moral anti-realism suggests that when you say murder is wrong, you're not stating a fact. You're doing something else. Maybe you're expressing disapproval, like saying boo murder. Maybe you're issuing a command, don't murder. Maybe you're describing your culture's rules, but you're not describing reality. This becomes clearer when we look at history. A few hundred years ago, slavery was common. Many people defended it as moral, even necessary. Today, most people view it as one of humanity's great evils. So which is it? Was slavery wrong then but accepted? Or did wrongness itself change? Moral anti-realism says neither. Slavery didn't carry a property of wrongness that people failed to see. People just changed their values, their attitudes, their social norms. The act remained the same. Human responses to it changed. But here's what makes this disturbing. If moral anti-realism is true, then you can't actually condemn anything in an ultimate sense. You can say, I disapprove, or my culture forbids this, or this violates the rules we've agreed on. But you can't say this is wrong as a simple fact about the world. The Holocaust wasn't objectively evil. Helping strangers isn't objectively good. All moral language becomes, at best, shorthand for preferences, and at worst, meaningless. You might protest, but surely some things are just wrong. Torturing bobbies for fun, for instance. How can that not be wrong? The anti-realist isn't saying you shouldn't feel strongly about it. They're saying your strong feeling doesn't point to a moral fact out there in the universe. It points to something in you, your biology, your upbringing, your empathy, all of which are products of evolution and culture, not windows into moral truth. Think about disgust. Many people feel disgusted by certain foods or by insects or by certain sexual acts. That disgust feels real, visceral, important, but it doesn't make those things objectively disgusting. It just means your brain responds to them that way. Moral anti-realism suggests that moral feelings work the same way. They're real feelings, but they don't track real moral properties. Now, some people find this liberating. If there are no objective moral truths, then you're free to create your own values. You're not bound by cosmic laws or divine commands. You're the author of your own moral code. But others find it terrifying, because it means that when you argue about abortion or capital punishment or animal rights, you're not arguing about facts. You're just expressing preferences, and preferences can't be proven wrong. They can only be shared or rejected. Imagine two people arguing. One says, eating meat is wrong. The other says, no, it's fine. If moral anti-realism is true, this argument has no answer. There's no fact that settles it. They might as well be arguing about whether chocolate tastes better than vanilla. It's a matter of taste, not truth. But morality doesn't feel like taste. It feels important, binding, real. When you see injustice, you don't just dislike it, you feel it's wrong. That feeling is so powerful that it's hard to believe it's just a feeling, not a perception of something real. Moral anti-realism forces you to sit with that discomfort, to accept that maybe, just maybe, the thing you care about most, the difference between right and wrong, is something you're making up as you go along. Some philosophers argue that morality is constructed, not discovered. We build moral systems together, through discussion, empathy, and social agreement. These systems are real in the sense that they shape behavior and create order, but they're not real in the sense that mathematics is real. They're more like laws or languages, human creations that work because we agree to follow them. But what happens when people stop agreeing? What happens when one group says this is right and another says this is wrong, and there's no higher court to appeal to? Moral anti-realism says, you fight it out, through politics, persuasion, and sometimes violence, but you don't settle it by discovering the truth because there's no truth to discover. This has implications that ripple out in every direction. It means you can't condemn other cultures for practices you find abhorrent, not in any ultimate sense. You can say, "We don't do that here," or "We'll stop you if we can," but you can't say you're objectively wrong. It means that moral progress is an illusion. We haven't gotten better over time, we've just changed. Future generations might view our values as barbaric, and we'd have no grounds to say they're wrong. It means that moral heroes, people who stood up for justice, who fought oppression, who risked everything for what's right, weren't responding to moral truth. They were expressing their preferences, their values, their feelings. Deeply felt, yes. Courageous, yes. But not grounded in anything more solid than their own conviction. Tonight, as you lie here, consider this. If moral anti-realism is true, then every moral judgment you've ever made, every time you've said that's wrong or I should do this, has been a kind of fiction. A useful fiction, maybe. A necessary fiction, but fiction nonetheless. The universe doesn't care whether you lie or tell the truth, help or harm, create or destroy. Those categories don't exist out there in the world. They exist in here, in your mind, in human minds, constructed from biology and culture and accident. And if that's true, then morality has all the weight you give it and no more. It matters because you decide it matters. It binds you because you choose to be bound. Some find that thought empowering, you're free. Others find it crushing, you're alone. Either way, the universe doesn't answer. It just is. And you're left to decide what to do in it, knowing that no choice is really right and no choice is really wrong. They're just choices, and you make them, and then they're done. And the world continues, indifferent exactly as it was before. If morality is built on shifting sands, how much power do you truly have to choose well or badly? Drift from the uncertainty of values to the challenge of freedom itself. The next paradox wonders if what feels like a choice is only the latest domino in a chain laid long before you were born, a gentle, unstoppable ripple set loose at the dawn of time. Determinism, the illusion of choice. You decided to listen to this, or did you? Think about the choice you made just now, to keep listening or to close your eyes or to let your mind wander. It felt like a choice, didn't it? Like you, the conscious you, decided what to do. But what if that feeling is an illusion? What if you never chose anything at all? This is determinism, the idea that every event, including every thought and action, is the inevitable result of what came before, that the universe is like a row of dominoes. Once the first one falls, the rest follow in perfect sequence. No randomness, no true choice, just cause and effect, stretching back to the beginning of time. Let's trace it back. Why did you decide to listen to this? Maybe you were curious. Maybe you couldn't sleep. Maybe someone recommended it. But why were you curious? Because of your personality, your past experiences, and your brain chemistry in this moment. And what determined those things? Your genetics, your upbringing, every interaction you've ever had, every sight and sound that shaped you. Keep going back. Why did you wake up today? Because you went asleep last night. Why did you go to sleep? Because your body sent chemical signals. Why did those signals fire when they did? Because of your circadian rhythm, your stress level, and what you ate for dinner. Why did you eat what you ate? Because of your preferences, your budget, and what was available. Why those preferences? Because of your taste buds, your memories, your culture. At every step, your choices seem to be the product of prior causes, and those causes had their own causes, and those had theirs. The chain extends back through your childhood, through your parents' lives, through human history, through evolutionary history, through the formation of the Earth, through the Big Bang. If determinism is true, then you, right now, listening to this, are the inevitable result of how the universe was 13.8 billion years ago. Every particle followed the laws of physics. Every cause produced its effect, and eventually, inevitably, those effects led to this moment. To you, thinking these thoughts, believing you have a choice. But if everything was determined by the initial conditions of the universe and the laws that govern it, then you never really chose anything. You're like a character in a movie, following a script. The character feels like they're making decisions, but the script was written before filming began. The ending is already determined. Free will is just what it feels like to be a deterministic system from the inside. This raises a disturbing question. What happens to responsibility? Imagine someone commits a terrible crime. They hurt someone. Under normal thinking, we hold them responsible. We say they chose to do wrong. We punish them. But if determinism is true, they didn't choose. They couldn't have done otherwise. Their action was the inevitable result of their genes, their childhood, their brain chemistry, and a billion other factors they didn't control. So can we really blame them? Can we call them evil? Or are they just unlucky, cursed by the particular arrangement of causes that led to their crime? Some people find this thought liberating. It means you're not to blame for your failures. That mistake you made, that person you hurt, that opportunity you missed, it wasn't your fault. You couldn't have done otherwise. The universe just played out the way it had to, and you were along for the ride. But it also means you can't take credit for your successes. That achievement you're proud of, that relationship you built, that moment of courage, it wasn't you. It was just the inevitable result of particles following laws. You're no more responsible for your triumphs than for your failures. You're just a complicated machine doing what machines do. Now, some people argue that determinism doesn't eliminate responsibility. They say that as long as your actions flow from your own desires and character, you're responsible, even if those desires and that character were determined by factors outside your control. This is called compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can both be true. You're free as long as you're doing what you want, even if what you want was determined by your past. But this feels like a trick. If your wants were determined by factors you didn't choose, then you're not really free. You're just a more sophisticated kind of dominated machine. The last domino in the chain doesn't get credit for falling. It's just doing what dominoes do. And here's where determinism becomes truly disturbing. If it's true, then every feeling you've ever had, love, anger, fear, joy, was determined before you were born. Every thought you've considered was inevitable. Every decision you've agonized over had only one possible outcome, fixed in place by the laws of physics and the initial conditions of the universe. The sense of inner conflict, of weighing options, of choosing between paths, it's all theater. A convincing performance put on by your brain, making you feel like you're in control when really, you're just watching a script unfold. Let's make it personal. Think about a choice you regret. Maybe you hurt someone. Maybe you gave up on something important. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken up. You've probably thought, I should have done differently. I should have been better. But if determinism is true, you couldn't have. The version of you that existed at that moment, with that brain, with those memories, with those chemical signals firing, that version could only have done what you did. Regret is irrational. There was never another option. Or think about a moment you're proud of. Maybe you were brave. Maybe you were kind. Maybe you achieved something difficult. You think, I did that. I made that choice. But determinism says no. The universe did it. The particles in your brain followed their paths. The you that feels like it made a choice is just an observer, watching a decision that was already determined and mistaking observation for authorship. Some neuroscientists have done experiments that seem to support determinism. They hook people up to brain scanners and ask them to make simple choices. Press a button with your left hand or your right hand, whenever you feel like it. And they find that the brain activity that predicts which button you'll press starts several seconds before you become consciously aware of making the choice. In other words, your brain decides before you do. The conscious feeling of choice comes later, after the decision is already in motion. You're not making the choice, you're being informed of it. This doesn't prove determinism absolutely. There are debates about quantum mechanics, about whether true randomness exists at the fundamental level of reality. Some argue that quantum indeterminacy means the universe isn't deterministic, that there's true randomness at the core of things. But even if that's true, it doesn't save free will, because randomness isn't choice either. If your actions are random, caused by quantum fluctuations in your brain, then you're still not in control. You're just at the mercy of dice rolls instead of dominoes. So whether the universe is deterministic or random, the result is the same. The feeling of free will, of being the author of your choices, seems to be an illusion. And that's what makes determinism disturbing. Not just that it might be true, but that there's no escape. Either your actions are determined by the past, in which case you're not free, or they're random, in which case you're still not free. Either way, the you that feels like it's making choices is a passenger, not a driver. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, notice how little control you have. You can't choose when sleep comes. You can't choose what thoughts arise. You can try to guide your mind, but even that trying is something that happens to you, not something you do. Maybe determinism is true. Maybe your entire life, from birth to death, is just the universe playing itself out. The story is already written. The ending is already determined. And the feeling that you're shaping it, that your choices matter, that you're free, maybe that's just what it feels like to be a complex mechanism following its programming. Or maybe not. Maybe there's something about consciousness, about selfhood, about the act of choosing, that escapes the chain of cause and effect. Maybe you are free in some deep, mysterious way that science hasn't captured yet. But you can't prove it, and you can't know for certain. All you have is the feeling, and feelings, as we've learned, can be deceiving. So sleep now. Let go of the illusion of control. Let the determined or random processes of your brain carry you into unconsciousness. It's going to happen anyway. You have no choice. Or do you? When choices fade into the currents of causality, and responsibility slips quietly away, what remains to guide you? Sweep outward, past laws and intentions, and find yourself floating not just in a world without freedom, but in a universe so vast that meaning itself grows dim. If the cosmos holds your story without caring, can anything you do truly matter? Nihilism, nothing means anything. Picture the universe, all of it. Billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, countless planets, an incomprehensible vastness stretching in every direction. And somewhere in a tiny corner of one galaxy, on the surface of one unremarkable planet, you exist. You live your life. You have goals, values, and relationships. Things matter to you. Love matters, fairness matters, your work matters, your legacy matters. But now zoom out. From space, Earth is a pale blue dot. Your country is invisible. Your city doesn't exist. You don't register. Zoom out further. The sun is one star among hundreds of billions. Our galaxy is one among hundreds of billions. And in a few billion years, the sun will expand, engulf the Earth, and erase every trace that we were ever here. Everything you've ever done, everything anyone has ever done will be gone. Not just forgotten, erased. Every building, every book, every piece of art, every love story, every war, every scientific breakthrough. All of it wiped away like marks in the sand when the tide comes in. And the universe won't care. It never did. This is nihilism. Not a mood, not depression, but a philosophical position. The view that life has no inherent meaning, purpose, or value. That the things we care about don't matter in any ultimate sense. That from the perspective of the universe, everything is equally meaningless. You might protest, but things matter to me. I care about my family, my work, and my dreams. The nihilist doesn't deny that you care. They just say that caring doesn't make something objectively important. A child might care deeply about a toy. That doesn't mean the toy has cosmic significance. Your love, your suffering, your triumphs, they matter to you, but they don't matter in any larger sense. Think about ants. They build elaborate colonies. They work tirelessly. They fight wars. To them, these things probably feel important, but do they matter? Would you say any civilization has meaning, or is it just activity, behavior programmed by biology signifying nothing? Nihilism suggests humans are the same. We're more complex than ants, sure, but fundamentally we're just biological machines doing what evolution programmed us to do. We build, we reproduce, we compete, we die. We tell ourselves it means something, but that's just a story we tell to make the activity bearable. Consider the history of Earth. Humans have existed for about 200,000 years. Complex life has existed for about 600 million years. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. On this timescale, human existence is a blink. Less than a blink. We're a brief flicker in the vast darkness. And when we're gone, when the last human takes their last breath, what will we have meant? Will our existence have mattered? The nihilist says no, because there's no one to matter to. Meaning requires a mind. Value requires a value. And when all minds are gone, when all valuers have vanished, what remains? Just empty space, just particles following laws. When meaning dissolves and the silence of existence presses in, another strange light flickers, the peculiar joy of pushing onward in a world without reason. From cosmic emptiness, step into the myth of Sisyphus and the philosophy of the absurd, where the boulder rolls back, yet every push is wholly your own. Philosophical Pessimism, Life as Suffering. Imagine waking up one morning with a sudden, crushing realization. Everything you've been told about life is a lie. Happiness isn't the natural state. Fulfillment isn't waiting around the corner. Life isn't a problem to be solved or a journey toward meaning. Life is suffering, and it always has been. This is philosophical pessimism, most famously articulated by Arthur Schopenhauer in the 19th century. And it's more disturbing than simple depression or nihilism because it's built on careful reasoning, not just dark moods. Schopenhauer observes something most people prefer to ignore. Want is the fundamental state of being alive. You want food, so you eat. Then you want it again. You want companionship, so you seek it. Then you fear losing it. You want achievement, so you work toward it. Then you want more. This wanting, this endless, insatiable craving, is what Schopenhauer called the will. It's the blind, purposeless force that drives all existence, and it's never satisfied. Think about your own life. When was the last time you felt complete? When nothing was lacking, nothing needed fixing, nothing pulling you toward the next thing. Those moments are rare, fleeting. Most of life is spent wanting what you don't have or fearing the loss of what you do. Schopenhauer argued this isn't a bug in human psychology. It's the fundamental nature of existence itself. We suffer not because we're doing life wrong, but because suffering is what life is. He pointed to 3 types of suffering. First, there's the suffering of not getting what you want: poverty, rejection, failure, loss. This is obvious suffering, the kind everyone recognizes. Second, there's the suffering of getting what you want, because satisfaction is always temporary. You achieve your goal, and for a brief moment you feel fulfilled. Then the wanting starts again. The new car becomes ordinary. The promotion becomes the new baseline. The relationship that once thrilled you becomes routine. This is hedonic adaptation, and it guarantees that even success leads back to dissatisfaction. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, is the suffering of boredom. Even if you somehow satisfied all your wants, even if you had everything you needed, you'd face the crushing emptiness of having nothing to pursue. Boredom, Schopenhauer said, is proof that life without want is unlivable. So we're trapped. Want creates suffering. Satisfaction is temporary, and the absence of want is unbearable. There's no winning position. But Schopenhauer went further. He argued that even moments we call happiness are really just temporary relief from suffering. You're not happy eating, you're just temporarily relieved of hunger. You're not happy being with loved ones, you're temporarily relieved of loneliness. Happiness is negative, the absence of pain, not a positive state in itself. If this sounds bleak, that's because it is. Schopenhauer concluded that the best thing would be never to have been born. Since birth is already done, the next best thing is to minimize suffering by denying the will, by wanting as little as possible. He prescribed art, philosophy, and contemplation as temporary escapes. These activities quiet the will momentarily, letting us step outside the cycle of want and suffering. But ultimately, he said, these are just pain management, not cures. Some found Schopenhauer's philosophy liberating. If life is inherently suffering, then your personal struggles aren't failures, they're the human condition. You're not doing it wrong, you're simply alive. Others found it paralyzing. If nothing leads to lasting fulfillment, why try? Why build, create, love, and strive? If it all leads back to suffering, what's the point? Modern psychology has complicated this picture. Research on happiness shows that while hedonic adaptation is real, meaning and purpose can provide deeper satisfaction than pleasure. People who pursue meaningful goals, even difficult ones, often report higher life satisfaction than those who pursue comfort. But Schopenhauer might say that the sense of meaning is just another form of the will, another way life tricks you into continuing. You find purpose in raising children, but then you worry about their well-being. You find meaning in your work, but then you're never satisfied with what you've accomplished. The will doesn't disappear, it just wears different masks. There's something deeply disturbing about philosophical pessimism, because it can't be easily refuted. You can't prove that life isn't suffering by pointing to happy moments. Schopenhauer already accounted for those as temporary relief. You can't argue that meaning makes it worthwhile. He'd say meaning is just a sophisticated want. The philosophy sits there, dark and heavy, challenging every comforting narrative we tell ourselves. It suggests that the basic project of human life, seeking happiness, building meaning, pursuing goals, is futile from the start. And yet, here's the strange thing. Understanding philosophical pessimism doesn't necessarily lead to despair. Some people find it oddly freeing. If life is suffering regardless of what you do, then you're released from the pressure to optimize, to succeed, to get it right. You can't fail at life if life itself is the problem. Maybe the most disturbing part isn't Schopenhauer's conclusion. It's the question he forces you to ask. Look at your own life honestly. Strip away the narratives, the hopes, the stories you tell yourself. What's left? Is there a core of contentment or just an endless cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again? Tonight, as you lie here, notice the small wants still present. The want for sleep, the want for tomorrow to go well, the need for this discomfort with disturbing ideas to pass. Even now, in this moment of rest, the will continues. Subtle, quiet, but there. Schopenhauer would say this never ends. That even in death, the will continues in other forms, in other beings, in the blind drive of existence itself. But for now, let it be. Let the wanting soften. Let the suffering fade into the background. Because if life is suffering, then sleep is a temporary reprieve, a small death, a brief escape from the will. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Not happiness, not fulfillment, just relief, just rest. Schopenhauer would approve. When meaning dissolves and the silence of existence presses in, another strange light flickers, the peculiar joy of pushing onward in a world without reason. From cosmic emptiness, step into the myth of Sisyphus and the philosophy of the absurd, where the boulder rolls back, yet every push is wholly your own. The absurd, Sisyphus, and meaninglessness. Picture a man at the bottom of a mountain. He's pushing an enormous boulder, straining with every muscle, slowly rolling it up the steep slope. Hours pass. Finally, exhausted, he reaches the summit, and then the boulder rolls back down. He walks to the bottom and begins again. This happens every day. Forever, he knows it's futile. He knows the boulder will always roll back, but still he pushes. This is Sisyphus, the figure from Greek mythology condemned by the gods to eternal, pointless labor. And according to philosopher Albert Camus, Sisyphus is you. Sisyphus is all of us. This is the philosophy of the absurd, and it's disturbing precisely because it's so difficult to escape. Camus argued that human existence is fundamentally absurd. Not absurd in the sense of silly or irrational, but absurd in a specific philosophical sense. There's a conflict between what we seek and what we find. We humans crave meaning. We want our lives to matter, our actions to have purpose, our existence to be part of some larger coherent story. We want the universe to make sense, to care, to reflect our values. But the universe doesn't cooperate. It's silent, indifferent, devoid of inherent meaning. The cosmos doesn't care about your struggles, your hopes, your suffering. Stars explode, galaxies collide, species go extinct, and it all happens without purpose, without narrative, without point. This collision between our need for meaning and the universe's meaninglessness is the absurd, and we can't escape it because we can't stop seeking meaning, and we can't make the universe provide it. Camus said there are three traditional responses to the absurd, and all three are forms of escape. First, there's physical suicide, simply ending your existence because meaninglessness makes life unbearable. Camus rejected this. Suicide doesn't solve the problem, it surrenders to it. Second, there's philosophical suicide, accepting some belief system that provides meaning even though it can't be rationally justified. Religion is Camus's primary example. Believing in God, an afterlife, or a cosmic plan gives life meaning, but only through what Camus called a leap of faith, abandoning reason to embrace comforting illusions. Camus rejected this too. He felt it was dishonest, a betrayal of our capacity for clear-eyed observation. We shouldn't paper over the absurd with convenient fictions. The third response, the one Camus endorsed, is to acknowledge the absurd and live anyway, to push the boulder knowing it will roll back, to create meaning in your own life while fully accepting that it's subjective, temporary, and ultimately groundless. He famously wrote, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." But why? Why should Sisyphus be happy? His labor is meaningless. His effort was wasted. His existence is a cosmic joke. Camus argued that Sisyphus can be happy through revolt, by fully accepting the absurdity of his situation and choosing to push the boulder anyway. Sisyphus takes ownership of his life. He's not deluded about meaning existing. He's not hoping the gods will eventually release him. He knows the truth, and he decides his pushing has value simply because he decides it does. This is existential freedom taken to its extreme. If the universe provides no meaning, then you're free to create your own. If nothing matters cosmically, then you get to decide what matters personally. The absurd becomes liberating, not paralyzing. But here's what's disturbing about this. It's entirely up to you. There's no external validation, no cosmic approval, no objective measure of whether you've chosen well. You create your own values knowing they're ultimately arbitrary. You build your own meaning, knowing it will die with you. And you can't even claim this is the right response to absurdity. Camus's rebellion is itself a choice without justification. There's no reason you should accept the absurd rather than commit suicide or embrace faith. It's just what Camus preferred. Everything is permitted, as Dostoevsky wrote, and Camus agreed. If there's no God, no inherent meaning, no objective morality, then nothing is forbidden. You can do anything. The only constraint is the one you impose on yourself. This radical freedom is terrifying. Most people don't want to create their own meaning from scratch. They want to discover meaning that's already there, waiting to be found. They want their choices to matter beyond themselves, to connect to something eternal. The absurd says no. Your choices matter because you choose to treat them as mattering, and for no other reason. Some find this empowering. If meaning is self-created, then you're not dependent on external circumstances for fulfillment. You can't fail to find meaning because you're always free to generate it. Even in the worst situations, imprisoned, impoverished, dying, you can still create significance through how you respond. But others find it hollow. If meaning is just personal preference, what separates meaningful actions from meaningless ones? If I decide stamp collecting is the purpose of my life, is that as valid as someone who decides saving lives is their purpose? There's no objective ground to say one is better than the other. Camus would say, correct. There is no objective ground, but subjectively from within your own perspective, some things matter more than others. You feel the difference between trivial and significant, even if you can't prove it to someone else. And that feeling, that internal sense of value is all you have. It's also all you need. The absurd is disturbing because it strips away all external validation. You're truly alone in creating meaning. The universe won't confirm you're on the right path. Other people might share your values, but that's just social agreement, not objective truth. You could be completely wrong about what matters, and you'd have no way to know. And yet Camus insists this doesn't make life meaningless in a practical sense. Yes, cosmically nothing matters, but experientially, humanly, things matter intensely. Love feels important, suffering feels bad, beauty feels valuable. These aren't illusions, they're the texture of human existence. The absurd doesn't erase these experiences. It just reveals they're not grounded in anything beyond themselves. Tonight, as you lie here, consider your own boulder. What are you pushing up the mountain? Career, relationships, legacy, self-improvement. And what happens when it rolls back down, when projects fail, when people leave, when achievements fade, when your body declines? Will you, like Sisyphus, return to the bottom and push again? And if you do, will you do it with resentment or with what Camus called absurd joy? The strange satisfaction of choosing your own labor despite its meaninglessness. There's something oddly peaceful about accepting the absurd. If nothing matters cosmically, then nothing can ultimately go wrong. Your failures aren't cosmic failures. Your mistakes aren't registered anywhere in the universe. You're free to try, fail, and try again, like Sisyphus, with no permanent consequences beyond the moment. The boulder will always roll back. That's not a bug, it's the nature of existence. And knowing this, you can push it anyway, not because you'll win, but because pushing is what you've chosen to do. Camus ends his essay on Sisyphus with one of philosophy's most haunting lines. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. The struggle itself, not the achievement, not the goal, not the meaning. Just the struggle, chosen freely, accepted fully, lived completely. Let that thought carry you into sleep. You're Sisyphus. The boulder is your life. It will always roll back, and tomorrow you'll push it again. And maybe, in some strange way, that's exactly as it should be. Not because there's a purpose, but because there's choice. Not because it matters, but because you've decided it does. Rest now, Sisyphus. Tomorrow the boulder waits, but tonight you're free. If the struggle itself is all you find, could you carry that effort into eternity, endlessly repeating each day, each triumph and regret, without change? The next thought experiment asks, if you must relive this moment forever, would you curse the cycle or learn to love fate enough to wish for its return? Eternal recurrence, living the same life forever. Imagine a moment of perfect horror. You're lying in bed just like now when a demon appears, not to threaten you but to tell you something. This life you're living, the demon says, you will live again, exactly the same. Every moment, every choice, every joy, and every suffering. When you die, you'll be born again into the same circumstances and you'll live the exact same life, again and again and again, eternally. Every embarrassment you've ever felt, you'll feel it infinite times. Every heartbreak, every failure, every moment of pain, infinite repetitions. But also every moment of joy, every success, every connection, infinite as well. Nothing changes, nothing improves, Nothing gets learned across iterations. You simply live this exact life, this exact sequence of moments, forever and ever and ever. How would you react? This is Friedrich Nietzsche's thought experiment of eternal recurrence, and it's designed to disturb you at the deepest level. Nietzsche presented this idea not as a cosmological theory but as a psychological test. He asked, if you truly believed your life would repeat infinitely, would you be filled with despair or joy? Would you curse the demon or thank it? Your answer reveals everything about how you're living. If the thought fills you with horror, Nietzsche would say you're living wrong. You're tolerating a life you don't truly affirm. You're compromising, postponing, settling. You're living in ways you wouldn't choose if you had to repeat them forever. But if the thought fills you with joy, if you could say yes to reliving every moment eternally, then you're living authentically. You've created a life you genuinely want, not just one you're enduring until something better comes along. This is what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting your life, but loving it so completely that you'd will it to repeat forever, unchanged. But here's what makes eternal recurrence so disturbing. Most of us would fail this test spectacularly. Think about your regrets, the relationships you damaged, the opportunities you wasted, the years spent in jobs you hated, the times you were cruel, cowardly, or simply absent. Now imagine experiencing all of that in infinite times. The same mistakes, the same suffering, the same mediocrity, forever. You can't learn from past iterations because you won't remember them. Each time through, you'll make the exact same choices. Feel the exact same regrets. Your growth, your wisdom, your hard-won lessons, they reset with each cycle. You're trapped not just in the same life, but in the same patterns, the same limitations, the same version of yourself. This makes eternal recurrence different from reincarnation. In reincarnation, you might come back as someone else, learn new lessons, evolve. But in eternal recurrence, there's no progress, just infinite repetition of this exact existence. Some find this thought paralyzing. If everything repeats anyway, why try to improve? Why not just accept whatever happens since it's fated to happen the same way infinitely? But Nietzsche saw it differently. Eternal recurrence isn't about fatalism. It's about taking radical responsibility for your choices. Because if this moment will repeat forever, shouldn't you make it as good as possible? Shouldn't you live in ways you can genuinely affirm? It's a call to ruthless self-examination. Are you living the life you actually want? Or are you sleepwalking through existence, hoping things will somehow get better later? Later never comes. There is only this, repeated infinitely. Nietzsche believed most people live in bad faith, postponing real living for some imagined future. They tolerate unsatisfying jobs because retirement will be better. They stay in unfulfilling relationships because change is scary. They suppress their desires because society disapproves. Eternal recurrence destroys these deferrals. There is no later, there is no other life. This is it, forever. Now you might object, but eternal recurrence probably isn't true. It's just a thought experiment, so why should it change how I live? Nietzsche would say, whether it's literally true is irrelevant. The question is whether you can live as if it's true. Can you create a life you'd willingly repeat? That's the standard you should hold yourself to. But here's the deeply disturbing part. Even if you radically changed your life starting now, even if you made every choice perfectly from this moment forward, you'd still be trapped repeating all your past mistakes infinite times. That embarrassing thing you said in high school, you're saying it again right now in some iteration. That relationship you destroyed, you're destroying it again. That opportunity you missed, you're missing it again. Your past is as eternal as your future. You can't escape it, can't redeem it, can't make up for it. It simply repeats, unchanging forever. This is where eternal recurrence becomes almost unbearable. Because it's not just about living well now. It's about accepting that every failure, every shame, Every moment you wish you could take back will exist eternally. There's no redemption arc, no growth, no learning from mistakes, just infinite repetition of the exact person you were at every moment of your life. Some philosophers interpret eternal recurrence as a call to self-acceptance. If you can't change the past iterations, you must make peace with them. You must learn to love even your failures, your flaws, your worst moments, because they're eternal. This is amor fati taken to its extreme, not just accepting fate but loving it, loving even the parts that hurt, that shame you, that you wish were different. But can anyone truly do that? Can you genuinely love your worst moments? Or is Nietzsche asking for psychological impossibility, demanding a form of self-acceptance that requires denying legitimate regret? And there's another disturbing implication. If eternal recurrence is true, you've already lived this life infinite times. Right now, you're in the middle of infinity. You've had this exact conversation with yourself infinite times before. You've wrestled with these exact thoughts infinite times. And you'll forget it all and do it again. This makes knowledge meaningless. Any wisdom you gain, any insights you have, they're not progress. They're just part of the eternal loop. You'll forget them and learn them again infinitely, making no cumulative progress. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect is that eternal recurrence makes everything simultaneously matter immensely and not at all. It matters immensely because these moments repeat forever. They're literally eternal. But it doesn't matter at all because you can't change them, can't escape them, can't do anything but repeat. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider this. Somewhere in the infinite iterations of eternal recurrence, you've fallen asleep in this exact position infinite times before. You've had these exact thoughts infinite times. You've lived this exact day infinite times. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all again. Not because you chose to, but because that's what you've done, are doing, and will do forever. Is there comfort in this, or only horror? Nietzsche believed the person who could embrace eternal recurrence, who could say yes to infinite repetition, had achieved the highest form of existence. They'd transcended resentment, regret, and the desire for life to be other than it is. But perhaps he was wrong. Perhaps eternal recurrence is simply too much for human psychology to bear. Perhaps we need the illusion of progress, of change, of growth to function. Or perhaps right now, in this iteration, you can decide. You can choose to live as if this moment will repeat forever. You can ask, if I knew I'd live this day infinite times, would I live it differently? And if the answer is yes, then maybe tomorrow you will. Or maybe tomorrow is just another iteration, and you'll make the same choices you always have, always do, always will. The demon is waiting for your answer, but you've already given it infinite times before, infinite times to come. Rest now, the eternal returns, it always does. Infinite repetition highlights what is closest and what remains unknowable. As you drift through eternal cycles, another question surfaces. Are you the only true light in the dark, or are there minds glowing quietly beside you? The riddle of other minds asks if connection is possible, or only imagined, as you sleep surrounded by stories that may never be shared. The problem of other minds. As the world quiets, a new question stirs in your soft, wandering thoughts. How do you know anyone else is truly alive inside? Not just moving and speaking, but truly feeling, warmed by love, stung by sorrow, dreaming private midnight dreams. You share your days with many friends, strangers, lovers, and family. They smile, they sigh, they yawn beside you in the night. Their eyes close, their faces soften. But inside, is there a secret world like yours? Or are you, as Solipsism quietly suggests, the only mind in a room filled with perfect shadows? Imagine for a moment a world of brilliant automatons. Their laughter is flawless, their concern seems real, their pain as convincing as your own. Yet nothing stirs behind their eyes, no feeling, no flicker of secret self. Could you tell? Would it change the meaning of their company? Perhaps you have seen a child clutching a treasured toy, so lost in their private world that they tune out the room. What if everyone is always just a little out of reach? A universe of isolated islands bumping gently in the dark. But kindness, too, grows from the mystery. If you can never be sure of another's inner life, every act of care, every word given or received becomes a leap of faith, a wild, beautiful offering into the unknown. You say, "I understand," and trust that something stirs in reply. You comfort, you love, and some part of you hopes that love lands, even if you can never see exactly how. Tonight, let the mystery of other minds soften your judgments, deepen your affection. If you are alone in your consciousness, the act of reaching out gains even greater meaning. If others are as real as you, then every handshake and hello is a quiet miracle. Let your mind rest in the uncertainty. Let the unknowing become a cushion, not a wall. The world outside your head may always be veiled, but the warmth you offer is deeply, undeniably real. Sleep now with the comfort that every soul, even if only possible, even if always mysterious, deserves tenderness. Solipsism, are you the only mind? The covers embrace you gently, the air has cooled and the lulling world is settling into a hush. Close your eyes, listen for the faint heartbeat pulsing behind the quiet and wonder, is anyone else truly there? Or are you the single, solitary awareness in an endless dream with all the world, every smile, every shadow, existing only for you? Solipsism is the quietly unnerving idea that only your mind truly exists. Everyone else, the people you love, the strangers on the street, even your family, might be nothing more than shadows painted on your private canvas, figures in your own unsharable story. As you listen to the night, feel how this notion settles over you like a soft, chilling mist. You witness laughter, hear sorrow, see love and pain shining from other eyes. Yet at the core of your experience, there is always one solid truth. You are absolutely certain only of your own awareness. No matter how vividly others speak or share, their reality is always a story whispered across an impassable divide. Let this thought settle. If you are the only consciousness in this vast expanse, then every story, every touch, every act of kindness is both a comfort and a performance, woven for you by you. Even the very voice guiding you now is a gentle flicker in your imagination, soothing your most unanswerable questions as you dissolve toward sleep. Philosophers do not insist that others are imaginary. They simply point out that you can never pierce the veil between lives. You will never directly inhabit the mind of another. Every embrace, every secret shared, might simply be your mind's longing for company, a faithful simulation of friendship in an otherwise silent world. And take heart, solipsism is not a sentence to infinite loneliness, but a strange reassurance. If the universe is your own dream, then you are also the one who dreams up warmth, meaning, and companionship. Kindness does not lose its softness just because it might be woven from your own desire for connection. Love, even fiction, soothes the ache by its own gentle light. Let the comfort of this paradox draw you down. You are both the main character and the audience, the dreamer and the dream, never truly isolated. In knowing that your awareness alone is certain, there's a quiet peace in realizing you carry the whole world within you. Let go of fear. Embrace the gentle absurdity. If you are the only mind, you are also the only heart, the only witness to this tiny universe of experience. As you slip into sleep, imagine that tomorrow you'll awaken surrounded by others, or perhaps find only the echo of your own thoughts. Either way, you are never truly alone when your own perception is vast enough to contain all the wonders you seek. Tonight, allow yourself to wonder at the possibility, soothing, haunting, and bold, that you alone could hold the tapestry of the world. Let mystery keep you company, soften you, and carry you gently into rest. Alone at the center of your experience, the next paradox awaits. If your mind itself is only the endpoint of countless causes, can you ever break free of the current? Now, follow that ripple. See if consciousness can outpace the web of necessity, or if the quiet illusion of freedom is just another soft blanket laid upon the mind. Determinism versus free will. Let your eyes sink closed and begin tracing the shape of your day. Every choice, every smile you gave, every worry you let pass. Each feels like a new beginning, a willful step upon the map of your own design. But as you breathe deeper, a quiet question stirs. What if none of your moments were ever truly free? What if every decision, no matter how small, is the gentle ripple of everything that came before? Determinism whispers that the universe is a tapestry, each thread a cause, each moment bound to the last. Every sigh, every joy, each decision is a domino, tipped by the long fingers of the past. Imagine, if you rewound the world to this morning, would every word and thought unfold exactly the same? Or could some secret freedom slip between the gears? Lie quietly as you wonder. Are your thoughts yours, or are they patterns triggered by your genes, your past, the weather, or the slow, invisible movements of the world? Every atom in your body follows the rules of physics. Every urge and hope may be a ripple in a current whose source you'll never see. But there's tenderness, too, in the idea of inevitability, the comfort of knowing that you are part of a vast design, a single current in the wide ocean. If there is no such thing as a choice without history, then you belong fully to this unfolding. Everything that shaped you, loved you, hurt you, each was building you as you are in this soft darkness. Ask yourself, if you were born somewhere else to different voices and landscapes, would your life feel the same? Would your secret worries and deepest joys simply rearrange, finding new shapes and names? Tonight, release the exhausting weight of having always to decide. Surrender, just for now, to the river of events and causes that holds you above the rocks. You are both a participant and a product, both the ripple and the vastness, the one who chooses and the one carried forward. There is no need to solve the riddle. Whether by fate or freedom, sleep visits all soft and accepting, wrapping you in the gentle inevitability of the night. Let your last thoughts drift, unresisted, into mysteries deeper than choice, resting quietly in the universe's patient hands. When fate and freedom blend, another ancient problem stirs. Amid all this necessity, why must suffering be so sharp and evil so persistent? If the universe is indifferent, pain seems to run unchecked. Will rest bring comfort or only more questions? The problem of evil. Your body relaxes into the mattress. Outside, the world darkens, but inside, a subtle landscape of questions glimmers. Drift gently toward discomfort, a place where philosophy, compassion, and sorrow intermingle. The problem of evil settles in the night beside you, patient and perennial. For centuries, this riddle haunted poets, believers, skeptics. If reality has a purpose, order, or loving intelligence, why is there so much suffering? Why do terrible things happen, sometimes abruptly, sometimes to the most gentle souls? Can pain be explained, justified, accepted, or must it always remain a wound at the heart of existence? Some claim struggle and grief are teachers, forging strength and wisdom. Others argue that no lesson could ever justify certain horrors. And perhaps, most frightening of all, is the thought that pain may have no purpose, random, indifferent, as unfeeling as the roll of a cosmic dice. Let this heaviness settle. The questions, the doubts, their sorrowful power. Notice how you, along with billions, are not alone in wondering. Ancient prayers and secular hopes have all met this riddle and found no easy answer, no single thread to untangle the knot. Shift gently inside. See how something quietly changes when you turn from demanding certainty to allowing uncertainty. You can hold grief and hope in the same open hand. You can let the mystery be your company, not your captor. Tonight, breathing softly, remember that life pulses onward in defiance. Seeds crack open and push toward light. Laughter erupts even after tears. Hands reach for other hands in solidarity. Even when the world seems broken, your simple existence is its own kind of light, a quiet refusal to surrender. Let yourself rest inside the paradox. Not every pain is meant, not every injustice has an explanation. Yet moments of peace and kindness, whether deserved or accidental, are real. The world may never answer why, but sleep, like mercy, is always here for you. Giving yourself to sleep does not mean forgetting tragedy or denying struggle. It is a small act of hope, a trust that, even in the hardest nights, gentle rest is possible. As you drift, carry both the sorrow and softness, knowing that sleep can hold the world's hardest riddles with gentle hands. Here you are safe, not from all pain but from the demand to always know. Tonight, you can breathe alongside mystery, surrender to sleep, and let your questions blend into dreams until morning. If you cannot explain suffering, must you surrender hope? Breathe into the darkness and feel the weight lift. The next idea invites you to design your own meaning from the void. No reason, no demand, just existence and the gentle permission to let go. Existential nihilism. Darkness drapes around you. Your chest rises and falls, a gentle rhythm. Thoughts soften, stretching thin as sleep draws near. But tonight, allow a strange possibility to slip gently between dreams. What if nothing truly matters? Not in a bleak, harsh way, but in the sudden, liberating freedom that comes when you release all the pressures of meaning. Existential nihilism wonders, if life has no built-in meaning, no grand script, no secret judge, then what compels you to care, to hope, to strive, or weep? The universe is silent, planets spin unobserved, stars burst and fade without applause. You are for a flash between infinities, a fleeting accident of chance. At first, this emptiness can seem cold, a void behind every achievement, love, or loss. But listen as the void fills with something unexpected, possibility. If the universe demands nothing, imposes no direction, then meaning truly is yours to weave. You can love someone just because. You can invent laughter, art, kindness from nothing but your own gentle will. Notice how nature itself ignores justification. Trees sprout not from a sense of duty, but because they can. The sun burns because it must, brightness for the sake of brightness, not approval. All the world is stitched together by its own quiet freedom. Tonight, let meaninglessness become spacious. The blanket doesn't ask what you did today. Your pillow has no agenda. You're allowed to simply surrender to be alive for no reason except that you are. Take a slow breath. Notice the pressure to matter, relax, dissolve. Tomorrow, meaning will reappear in the ways you choose. A small kindness, a silly song, a few shared words. But for now, let go. You are wonderfully a miracle without purpose. And in this strange freedom, sleep finds you gently without question or demand. In the calm of midnight, let yourself drift, light as a leaf on an unpredictable breeze. Sleep knows nothing of meaning or unmeaning. All it asks is that you trust, soften, and rest, savoring the mystery that you exist tonight, and that tonight is enough. Eternal return. Sleep hovers close, stillness gathering. Imagine for a moment, living your life again and again and again, every choice, every breath, every ordinary joy and secret sorrow repeating in perfect detail, not just once but endlessly, spinning through the cycles of time. This is the mythic suggestion of eternal return, an idea echoing over centuries, whispered through the corridors of philosophy. What if, when your story ends, you awaken only to begin it once more, every moment replayed? The laughter, the pain, the words spoken and left unsaid. As you hold this thought, let its strange possibility settle into your bones. Would knowing your life was a loop make you careful, or would you become wild with freedom? Would regret or joy change their taste, if you met them both tonight and forever after, companions on an infinite walk? Perhaps you'd learn to cherish every moment, the familiar as much as the unique, knowing that nothing, not even the smallest kindness, is ever truly lost. Each act, each word, is woven into a tapestry that cannot unravel, no matter how many times you travel its length. Maybe with enough cycles, you'd find peace, courage to savor the routine and the remarkable, recognizing that meaning grows with repetition, that softness is carved out of the endless return. Tonight, let the possibility of eternity be a gentle comfort, not a chain. Your breathing is the quiet metronome of forever, a cycle in its own right. Every rise and fall is a practice in timelessness, a ritual as old as any story. Surrender to your own narrative. Sleep now, knowing that every night in every life you deserve a peaceful rest. Should time itself turn end over end, your gentle presence is as precious and as meaningful as every star that ever spun. As you spiral through endless cycles of your own experience, the world outside starts to blur, faces, voices, even memories growing ghostly at the edges. If existence is repetition and everything outside your inner world is always just a little out of reach, what if, in the final accounting, you are alone with your thoughts? What if every other mind is a dream you carry from cycle to cycle? Here, at the edge of thought, you are free from every demand and every question. The world is as uncertain and wild as ever, and yet safe to leave behind. Tonight, all disturbances, philosophical and personal, hum quietly as you surrender to sleep. You do not need answers. You do not need meaning. All you truly need is rest. Let the mysteries curl gently, folded into dreams, as sleep settles around you as softly as moonlight. In this space you hold every possibility. Tomorrow will come, some paradoxes will remain, but tonight you are whole in the gentle quiet between every idea. Sleep deeply, questions can wait and comfort is yours.